move, please. Yalla.
How are you, sir? Karibu nyumbani. Huyu ndio mwenye mkutano.
Who's have money, sir? Those people have money. We just they are going to do this.
We meet against the backdrop of global economic shocks and disruptions arising from the war in the Gulf. From the war in Ukraine a few years to the war in the Gulf in a few weeks. Africa today produces approximately 10 million barrels of oil per day, which is about 10% of global output. Yet, paradoxically, we remain net importers of petroleum products to the tune of 120 million metric tons annually at a cost of about $90 billion. At an average export price of $75 per barrel, Africa's crude production is valued at roughly $270 billion each year. However, it is this same production, if this same production were refined domestically and exported as finished products at an average price of US $800 per ton, it would generate over $500 billion. This represents foregone income of about $230 billion, which is nearly 7.5% of our GDP from just one resource. This does not even account for the additional gains from downstream industries such as plastics and fertilizers, which we currently import and which we could add another 2 to 3% of our GDP. Excellencies, what point am I trying to make? Africa's place in global trade is defined by a structural imbalance that requires our urgent attention. According to the UN Trade and Development, the continent continues to export predominantly raw materials, minerals, fuels, and agricultural commodities, while importing the very products manufactured from those same resources. In many of our economies, over 60% of exports remain commodity-based, while we import nearly 3 times more manufactured goods than we export. It should not surprise us, therefore, that manufacturing has stagnated at about 10% of GDP for the last 2 decades. When I came into office, I will give you 2 examples, if you can indulge me. When I came into office, we had a serious fuel crisis in the country. There were queues in our petrol stations. The first lot of people to come to see me, even before I left my former office, were oil marketers. And they told me, Mr. President-elect, we are facing a stock out. We do not have dollars. We have a crisis. And it became my first assignment, maybe baptism by fire, on my first day in office. And we figured out with my team, how do we deal with this? And I remember reaching out to friends who, for this meeting I will not mention, good friends of mine who are running multinational banks and telling them, oh, we need to do this. Little did I know that many of them were already figuring out how they are going to make money when the dollar went to 200 shillings, Kenya shillings to $1. They're already thinking how to make money from foreign exchange. I mean, I'm looking at how do we solve a Kenyan problem. It is only one bank, one Kenyan bank, Kenya Commercial Bank, that was willing to issue letters of credit and stand with us at that very critical moment. Do you know what happened? We not only solved that problem in a very permanent way. Today we have a G2G framework that many other countries have come to learn from us. Malawi have been here to learn from us. Burundi have been here to learn from us how we did it. So we solved the problem. But do you know what? Kenya Commercial Bank made tons of money in the process. Their share price went from 17 shillings to now 74 shillings. You know, if there was a case for believing in ourselves, Kenya Commercial Bank, being a Kenyan bank, believed in us. We believed in them. The outcome is a win-win. We not only solved our problem, but we built our bank even more. That's one example. Example number 2. When I made a proposition to the people of Kenya on a matter that has been with us for a long time, on how do we deal with the challenge of housing. And it's a conversation we've had for long as Kenyans, possibly 25, 30 years of conversation. And I did make a proposition to the people of Kenya that it was necessary for us to do this using our own resources, mobilizing domestic capital for us to be able to undertake our housing program. There was a big debate, but today we have done what we couldn't do with money borrowed from this place and that place, talking to this guy and the other guy and one bank and another one. Using our own domestic resources, today we are building, concluding some of them, 240,000 housing units, with a pipeline of 700,000 housing units. We are building hostels for 180,000 students in our universities and TVETs, and we are building 600 modern markets around Kenya with our own resources. Using a housing fund derived from a housing levy, we have signed contracts for $4 billion. $4 billion. Not a single shilling borrowed from anybody. Domestic resources built by Kenyans, raised from Kenya. Believing in ourselves. The instructions are very clear that our minerals, you know, for the record, sit down, was it? For the record, we had Base Titanium, one of the companies, they were exporting titanium out of Kenya. They exported everything close to the mines, and we got nothing out of it. Very little, you know. And the future generations are going to ask us, there was titanium in Kenya. What happened to it? And we will have no answers for it. And that is why, going forward, we've been very clear as a government that the rare earth that we are now looking at, all the other gold issues and the whole mineral sector, we are not going to export it raw anymore, with clarity. And that is why, as we build the refinery together, this conference is also how are we going to take charge of all the other minerals in our region that are today being exported in raw form. How do we create an ecosystem here that also creates better beneficiation of these minerals by processing it here and driving the industries that use these minerals to come here and work with us, because in any case, and that is, allow me to say why we cannot fail. It is not possible for us to fail. Even with the refinery, it is not possible for us to fail. Why? Because we have the raw material. We have crude. Number two, we have the market to buy the product. You know, we are currently importing the products from all over the place. So we have the market to sell. Number three, we have the capital to build it, to develop it. And we have the industrialists to help us run it. Why would we fail?
That's a fair question.
Amen. When the other day we divested from Kenya Pipeline because we wanted to unlock the value of Kenya Pipeline and use it for the transformation of the country, President Museveni called me and said, I want to buy 50% of Kenya Pipeline. And he told me, I don't care the price. You know? That's how serious he was. When some other pessimists in Kenya were saying, oh, you know, the price is very high, I don't know. You know, President Museveni could see beyond the price. He could see the opportunity of transforming our nation, our region together. Mzee, I want to assure you that the same way you invested in Kenya Pipeline, Kenya is going to invest in your refinery and in the future of our resources together. And hopefully we can bring all the other countries in our region to see the value, not in the short-term benefit you get from something cheap from somewhere else, but in the benefit of building something for the future that will not only earn you money today, but earn you opportunities tomorrow. We cannot continue to export raw materials and importing finished products made from them. The conversation we will have over the next 2 days must therefore be truly definitive on the way forward in terms of manufacturing and value addition. In this room, we have political leaders, we have industrialists, captains of industry, financiers, everyone required to move this agenda from aspiration to implementation. That is why I propose 3 key action points. First, we must strengthen our political resolve to deepen regional integration. Our countries possesses complementary endowments, including natural resources in one country, energy resources in another country, and an optimal location for industrial processing in the next country. These must be connected through infrastructure, roads, rail, ports, and electricity grids, so that raw materials and intermediate goods can move freely across borders. Equally important, the benefits of such integration must be shared equitably, ensuring that national boundaries do not impede the full realization of a common market with the free movement of goods, capital, and people. Second, we must establish regional platforms for strategic industries. It is worth recalling that the European Union began as the European Coal and Steel Community in 1951. Our East African community is richly endowed with renewable energy, the full spectrum of minerals driving the global energy transition, including copper, cobalt, nickel, manganese, graphite, lithium, and rare earth elements in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Burundi, in Rwanda, in DRC. We're all members of one community. I remember last evening talking to the president of Burundi on the possibilities that exist with the rich resources that exist in Burundi. I remember discussing with President Samia Suluhu this week. I put a phone call to President Museveni last week on this whole setup. And I want to thank you, Mzee, for finding time to be here. So that we can demonstrate leadership at the highest level to move this process forward. We must now move deliberately to pool these resources and position ourselves competitively in the global green manufacturing arena. However, we cannot achieve competitiveness without affordable energy, making large-scale investment in renewable energy an urgent priority, and ensuring that the resources that we have in our region, including the oil we have in Uganda, the little oil we have in Kenya, we must find the mechanism to leverage on these resources and drive our industrialization. We must harness African capital. As the saying goes, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Industrialists here know the meaning of that phrase better than all of us. Our ambitions will remain unrealized if we continue to depend on external capital whose primary interest is securing raw materials for their own industries. We must say that with clarity. We must therefore strengthen our regional development finance institutions, including the Africa Finance Corporation. And I want to inform the Africa Finance Corporation fraternity that as you set up office in Nairobi, the Kenya government is going to enhance its equity by $25 million as a demonstration of the confidence we have in African financial institutions. I know the president of Afrexim Bank is here with us. When I came into office, we enhanced our equity in Afrexim Bank by $40 million. I know my friend Tadesse is here. We have already discussed how Kenya, being among the highest shareholders of TDB Bank, how we are going to enhance our equity and shareholding in Trade and Development Bank. And we are doing it intentionally and deliberately because we know that they understand us better than anybody else. We do not have to explain ourselves in windy statements and languages. They understand us. They understand where we are. And they know us better than anybody else would. And I want to assure you that we will continue as leaders in this continent to build our own African financial institutions, give them the capacity. And I know we haven't done enough. You can count on us, we will do more. Until we develop the muscle for us to be able to drive our own industrialization and our own development. I say so with benefit of experience. And I will say this, why we must believe in ourselves. I want to say this with clarity. We must, if we are to make progress, it begins with us believing in ourselves. And this is a message I have been having a conversation with the people of Kenya. We must believe in ourselves.
But also, the government, our countries can deliberately save. We have been funding, we set up a science innovation fund where I have been funding government innovations. We have built an electric vehicle called Chira motor vehicle, and its sister vehicles, the bus and the other smaller vehicles, using government money, government capital. So now we are getting demands, getting orders for that electric vehicle. We had to build our own vehicles because I had begged the Japanese to come and assemble in Uganda. They refused. So I said, okay, bye-bye. Now, when I started making my vehicles, some of the Japanese came. So want to assemble? I said, no, too late. I will not allow any assembly in Uganda. You must manufacture, not assemble. The vaccines, we have been funding them ourselves. I'm going to launch an anti-tick vaccine the day after, a few days to come. So we have the capital. It's not enough, but we have it. If we constrain consumption, we can get the capital. So therefore, I'm very happy with the initiative of His Excellency Ruto. Like on the issue of the refinery, what he told you, in Uganda, I have banned the export of unprocessed minerals. All of them, I have banned them. They have been praying for me to die or something like that, but no export of tin, no export of copper. They are all there in the ground. But slowly we are getting investors. Iron ore. Can you imagine? Some Indian guy from India, the New Delhi, had come to made a deal with my people to sell our iron ore at $47 per ton. The iron ore of Uganda is the best in the whole world. It is about 70% pure. So, when you sell iron ore, somebody goes and makes it into steel. He earns, at one time he would earn $900. And you export all the jobs. But I stopped them. And I'm glad that some of the investors from Kenya, encouraged by His Excellency Ruto, are now investing in the steel industry in Uganda. It is very true that if you don't have infrastructure, how will you have industrialization? How will you have modernization? Now, on infrastructure, we are moving very well now. From the comments of His Excellency President Ruto, from the comments of the AFC, we are all moving in the right direction. The only clarification I want to make is that there are core cost pushers. If you want your economy to succeed, you must identify the core cost pushers, which push costs in production. One of them is transport. Transport, especially the railway and the water transport. So if you build the railway, you must build it with either government money, who are not looking for high profits and quickly, or with patient capital, patient private capital. Because if you have got very high cost of transport, of the railway, how will you compete? How will you compete? How will the companies make money? The other cost pusher is electricity. In Uganda, with my people behind my back, they made a mistake, and they went with a group called what? I don't know what they called them. And they built a dam, one of the dams on the Nile, using private money. When it came to the price of the electricity, production was 16 cents per kilowatt hour. How can you make money? How can that electricity help the economy? Well, it almost caused a civil war because they didn't tell me, they went behind my back. But the dams were built with government money. We are able to produce electricity at 4.8 cents, American cents per kilowatt hour. Then the old dams, the ones we have already paid for, the cost is 1.2 cents, American cents. So there, we must be very careful. It must either be government money or patient capital, not people who are looking for quick money. Export of raw materials, unprocessed. When you export unprocessed, when you export cotton unprocessed as lint, you get $1.2 per kilogram. That 1 kilogram, if you make cloth out of it and garments, you will get $15. The same kilogram for which you got 1.2. If you weave, you spin, weave, and get garments out of it, you'll get $15. Coffee. A kilo of coffee unprocessed is $2.5. The same kilo processed will go for $25 or even $40. So the Africans have been the mega donors. I don't know why they are never called in conferences for donors in Paris, because they are the mega donors. In every kilogram of coffee, you are donating $40. And they don't know. You find the Africans there putting on ties, moving around. They are not bothered. So therefore, without electricity, without the railway, you cannot industrialize. And you go on with the raw materials. That's why you have got this stunted economy. So the African economy is stunted because of these mistakes, because of these hemorrhages. We should not look at these issues in isolated ways. This was the problem in the 1960s and even 70s. They would pick one item, rural development. Then they talk about that, talk about that, talk about that. Then after some time they say, oh, no, women empowerment. Then women empowerment. Then education. Then just like that. Because we are talking of interregional infrastructure. But how will you have interregional infrastructure if there are wars going on? And these wars are based on ideological bankruptcy. People believe in sectarianism. They believe in the politics of identity, of tribe, of religion. The wars which are going on in the Middle East, what is their ideological base? What are they fighting for? We know all those people. The Iranians, the Israelis, the Americans, we know all of them. We have good relations with them. But you can see that the mistakes which they have in their thinking is the one which causes all this suffering. Mistakes, ideological. I welcome these very good technical, professional ideas about infrastructure. But I think if we only focus on infrastructure alone, we may not go far. Because there are wars. There are wars in Congo, there are wars in South Sudan, there are wars in all these different places, Somalia. So how will you have infrastructure if people are fighting for wrong reasons? Therefore, strategic obstacle number one in this booklet, which I will give you, was ideological disorientation. Why do you believe in tribalism and religious sectarianism? I am a cattle keeper. I'm like these Maasais who are dancing here. I produce milk, I produce beef, I produce bananas. But people in my tribe don't buy from me. Why? Because they also have the same products. I have milk, they have milk. They don't buy from me, I don't buy from them. I have beef, they have beef. So who buys from me? The people of Kampala, many of whom are not my tribe. The people of East Africa. So my prosperity is supported more by Uganda as a country and East Africa and Africa than by my own small group. If therefore you have somebody killing people just because of religion or tribes, how will you have the corridors we are talking about? That is strategic obstacle number one. Because of ideological fragmentation, then you end up with weak states. No army. Why is there insecurity in Africa? Some of these countries have no armies. Why don't they have an army? Because they cannot build one. Why? Because or ideology. You want to have a highly paid army when you don't have money. How will you have an army? So therefore, because of that, and then when you recruit soldiers, instead of joining the national army, they join the clan armies like in Somalia. Now, if you don't have army, the final bottleneck was lack of democracy. Because that was also another problem. Because if you don't have, I see some people trying to say democracy is not a luxury. No, democracy forces you to be accountable, to go to the people and win their support. Recently we had elections, and where my people listened to my advice, we performed very well. Because when they implement what we like, getting rid of poverty in the whole country. How can you preserve poverty in the whole country? It's not a national park that you are preserving. So now, therefore, I want to conclude by saying that we have the money here. Yes, we are getting more money. Now our speaker from AFC gave a very good example. The pension funds, what are they being used for? NSSF in Uganda has got a lot of money, but they just invest in treasury bills. The government borrows from national fund and eats the money. They borrow for eating. So our expert has really challenged you people. You heard him, that the NSSF money should be not for eating. Because if you treasury bills, they are borrowing to pay debts, to pay salaries, to pay what? They are not borrowing for I call infrastructure omsomyo in our language. Omsomyo means the bone marrow. You know, the English don't have enough words. They couldn't describe that part of the body. The bone marrow, they call it bone marrow. But in our language, we call it omsomyo or omshokoro in one of the other languages. So the omshokoro of the economy is the railway, transport, electricity, the cost of, plus of course peace and so on. So if the NSSF money is used for eating, not to build part of the bone marrow, because the English don't have enough words, it's a very big mistake.
What we need, first of all, is consistency in government policies. That's number one. And also the support of the governments here. Because, I mean, if you look at it really, what we lack in Africa is quite a lot. Because we're a continent of imports, and we're not really exporting much. We export raw materials, which means when you export raw materials, you are exporting jobs. And when you import, you are importing poverty. Because you are creating jobs out there, not here in the continent. So I think with the support of the government, there's nothing that is impossible. And some of us were really tired of seeing our continent going out there to be begging for anything. I mean, if you remember at the beginning of the war between Ukraine and Russia, the chairman of African Union, that was President Macky Sall, had to go and be begging for fertilizers. And since that day, I said, okay, fine, by 2028, Africa will be self-sufficient in fertilizer. And while doing that, we're opening 20 blending plants in areas where they don't have the capacity. Also, we're going to be at 12 million tons of urea. We're going to have massive potash and phosphate from Congo, Brazzaville. And we believe we will satisfy most of the demands of Africa. I mean, you look at it today, with population of Africa of 1.4 billion and also rising, right? We don't have raw material for detergent, just to wash these clothes, which we need every day. We don't have. We only have 2 factories, one Egypt, 50 tons, 100 tons in Algeria. So that's why we also launched now 400,000 metric tons of linear alkaline benzene, which is the 100% raw material of detergent. So we have quite a lot of which before we don't have the capacity. But right now, with the likes of Afrexim Bank, with the likes of Africa Finance Corporation, with a lot of support from other financial institutions, following these two, there's nothing we cannot do in Africa. That's why we, as a group, we have now launched between now and 2030, we're investing $40 billion in various fields.
Is part of that the refinery?
Even now, I can give commitment to the 2 presidents that were here. If they will support the refinery, we'll build the identical one that we have in Nigeria, 650,000 barrels.
So the discussions are still early, though, but the 3 of you, it seems like you're trying to make this work.
It will work. There's nothing that can stop it. We have done the one in Nigeria, and that's why we are taking the bold move, which we have started already. Piling has started. We are building that one to a scale. 1.4 million barrels a day will give us will be the largest refinery in the world. That's number 1. Number 2, will have 10% of the entire United States of America's refining capacity. And this is coming with a lot of, petrochemicals. I mean, you look at it today in Nigeria, if not because we have polypropylene, all the businesses would have collapsed because cement is packed in polypropylene, flour, rice, grains, everything. So nothing. And the cost now has shot up between just 45 days from $900 a ton to $3,000. There's no way you can afford it. So that is why we must learn how to build self-sufficiency. Right now, we have big financial institutions that are very hungry for big ticket items, and we are also big in terms of our own vision. You know, I mean, before, there's nothing that, any one of us will sit down and say, no, I want to build something like, I mean, when Samaila was heading our finance, long time ago, this was 2003, 2004, 2005, we were even paying 44% interest rate in Nigeria. We had to go to IFC to raise money. Was our first loan abroad was 478 million. And this thing can be done. 478 million, Samaila gave them a calculation that, okay, we need 3 years loan. They said, no, you guys, you don't know what you are talking about. You need 7 years. 2 years moratorium, 5 years payment. We said, okay, we agree because we are desperate for the money. When we took that money, we paid it back before the expiration of the moratorium, which is 18 months. 24 months, but we paid the money back in 18 months. So it is possible. Africans can do it. Let us not be scared. Let them not come and convince us that, no, somebody needs to carry our raw material to go and produce and bring the items here. I must really thank President of Uganda for taking this bold move. Stopping the export, they will be forced, they will come and produce. Why do you want to take the raw material, then you bring it back? We too, we have educated people, we have big financial institutions. It's not like before. Things have changed.